You are listening to the Partnership for the Arts talk show with Dave and Judy.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Partnership for the Arts, where we talk art. Hope you all are doing great today. Judy, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing really fine, Dave. I've been pretty busy here, having a good time. Found that even being retired, I'm busier probably than I was when I was working full time.
And you wonder how you got anything else done, right?
I do sometimes. Yeah.
Well, excited about the show today?
I'm really excited. You were telling me about our guest, Drew Geraci, and I don't know a whole lot about comic art, and I did a little bit of research on my own, and I'm super excited to hear more about it.
Well, you're going to get to learn all the kind of good stuff in and out, and Drew's also been busy doing some other things, novels and all. We're going to talk to him about that when we get ready to start the show. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, then here we go.
This is Partnership for the Arts. Come join us
as we explore the worlds of art.
You can find us on our Facebook page, Partnership for the Arts Group Talk Show.
Or you can find all of our episodes on our new website, pftatalkshow.org.
This show is recorded at the Visual Arts Center in Punta Gorda, Florida. Hey everyone, we're back and we're excited to introduce Drew Geraci to our show and find out a little bit about what he's up to today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Great to have you on. And everyone, we are speaking with Drew via the web. And Drew, you are in Atlanta, correct?
Yeah, just a little south of Atlanta, but essentially you can call it Atlanta. Like Pittsburgh has 1 billion townships, but they all call themselves Pittsburgh overall, you know.
Well, welcome to the show, Drew. We're happy to have you here today.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing what we find out together.
There you go. And Drew, we had mentioned before you came on some of the things you do, but we're going to kind of cover those in detail. So how about we get started?
That sounds okay to me.
All right.
All right.
So before the show, we had a chance to talk. Well, let's start with the comics. You've been involved in the comic world for a while, correct?
Since 1995, yeah. So over 25 years. Same year I got married. I threw myself headlong into comics because I thought, well, why have a stable job while you're newlyweds?
Well, let's go from there, Drew. You didn't get into comics by just one day deciding you were going to ink something and start handing them out on the street. You actually started out assisting, correct?
Well, yeah, I started off assisting Dave Johnson, who is is award-winning cover artist for a lot of DC and Marvel comics, and he was real helpful. I met him at conventions. He sent me samples, and I worked on them like with frosted acetate and inked over it with a brush, and he liked it, and I became his assistant for about 7 months. I learned a lot. The first thing was getting over the fear of a live page in front of you that's going to be printed. So he started me off with like a silhouette of a train and train tracks, so it kind of got me comfortable. And then I got, I really picked up on it quick because I just wanted it so bad. I've wanted it most of my life, but for the longest time I was my own worst enemy. I was like, it's just a pipe dream. You're not that good. But I was, my biggest obstacle was myself. And I always did pretty good. When I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, which recently closed its doors. I went there, and some of the stuff was almost immediately, how can I say, outdated by the time I graduated. We were learning how to write fonts, hand lettering and kerning, and doing 3-point perspective by hand, and all this other stuff that computer, what did they call that? Desktop publishing at the time in the late 80s. And then it evolved, but I did have a life drawing class, which I really enjoyed. It was a guy named Henry Kerner, and we'd have nudes pose. And the teacher, how long am I allowed on this show?
Well, we're doing good on time, Drew, so go ahead.
I just don't want to be, but anyway, I had a teacher, Henry Kerner, he painted many Time magazine covers for the 50s and 60s, and famous people sat for him, like the Kennedys and Barbra Streisand and all these other people, and Maria Callas. And he had us draw with a rapidograph pen, no pencil. And it was like drawing without a net, but it made you think of every line you're putting down. And to be completely immodest, I was pretty much the best in the class. But it gave me such a rush because a confidence booster, because I wasn't sitting there redrawing. And I was just going for it. And he said, "You are a master of line art," or something like that. And I was really flattered. But I still wasn't good enough to be an inker in comics. But that's something I always wanted to do. But then I took the safe route, went for a career in advertising, and that was okay. But I was so restless after a while. And I kept getting promoted to higher and higher management, getting away from the art aspect of it. So, I quit, took a minimum wage job, and I had my evenings and weekends free again. It took me about 2.5 years of really figuring out what I was doing, because the whole thing about inking, and even when I was a kid, I loved inking, which is where you get pencils from an artist, and depending if you're a good inker or not, you do quote unquote trace over it. But if you do a terrible job, it's going to be very evident. But if you do a really good job, it's going to either be very professional or great, So, when I started my first job on Justice League of America, which at the time was a low-selling book because they didn't have all the big stars that they were worried about continuity with other titles. And then a year later, Grant Morrison rebooted it with Howard Porter, and I got to ink Howard later on, which was great. I mean, I got to work on the #1 title, but it was like plateaus. And I've always liked the cold graphic of black and white. Gaijin Studios, which is helmed by Brian Stelfreeze, really got into like the Patrick Nagel style. The guy who did Rio, the painting, and did a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I was always drawn to that, and apparently so was Brian. I love doing that kind of stuff, and that's even in the '80s. I was trying to break in, sort of, but very. I wasn't very. I just wasn't really motivated. I was didn't apply myself, but and then when I realized I was about 27, I'm like, I could do this. I could not do this and be a bitter old man, or I should go for the brass ring. So I took the baby steps, and I got in, and I hit the deadlines, and I got better with each book I did. And I'd have to turn down assignments. I'd get assignments left and right, which was flattering but maddening. Because it's like, I want to take everything on.
Wow.
But,
okay.
Well, sure, you've probably been asked this before, but, when did you first get interested in comics, and what were your favorite comics at the time? I mean, for me, I think it was Betty and Veronica, but I know that's not the kind of inking that you do, Drew.
Well, my wife actually, she said she liked Archies, and then when she grew up enough, she got rid of them. Like some people grow out of comics, and so that's the only thing she really read that she could remember. But I was about 7 years old. I was staying at my grandparents' house for a whole summer, and I loved being there because being the grandchild, you get kind of spoiled. So anyway, there was a 7-Eleven, a good walk away, and my grandmother took me, and she got me like 6 comics, and I bought all Marvel comics because the covers were so splashy and multicolored. And the DC books were very scary and too adult looking. Marvel was sensational in its styling. It's very pop art. But DC had these, like, there's a guy named Neil Adams and Nick Cardy. I mean, they do people you can almost touch. I mean, and they had the horror comics that were just scary looking, and it was very scary looking to me. But those 6 comics I read the whole summer. I started drawing my own. I'd reread them, and I just didn't really get into collecting them. I just thought, well, these look like fun. They're fun to draw, and it just became such a passion with me. I just drew that whole summer, and then when I got back to Pittsburgh, I continued doing it on like the weekends and stuff like that, and it was so fun. It was emulating, not with light boxes or whatever. I would just eyeball it, with a big with a big pen on lined school paper.
So as a young boy then, was it the artistry that you were interested in, or the story itself, the heroism, the fantasy, or what really captured your interest in the comics?
I think it was a little bit of everything. It's like I sort of wanted to be those characters. I thought they were cool. At the time, I mean, Marvel just had this there was a sense of nobility around the good guys, and I'm not saying you have to make everything black and white, but I can't even think. I could relate to a lot of the characters, even though I hadn't fought Thanos or anything. It's just, I can't quite describe it. It just hit me. I have this thing in my mind. I literally do not recall anything in my life until I saw my first comics. That's like when my mind's eye opened up, you know, and I just started drawing like crazy, and I thought everybody did that. And then years later, I was sketching at a show, and some guy was like really fussing over me, which was very flattering, but it wasn't that great a sketch. And I said, here you go, you know, and if I'm like 100% happy with the sketch, and if somebody gets to wait too long, sometimes I'll just give it to them. And if they flip it on eBay, that's on them, you know, but I usually do charge. And I said, I don't get it. And my friend Deerwood says, Drew, not everybody can draw. And I just assumed everybody did, you know, because I just took to it. It was such a release. I was such a quiet little church mouse, and it just really gave me a feeling of expression. You know,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's a great beginning, Drew. I can completely relate to that. I was the same way.
Yeah, it's fun. It's just I just didn't realize it was a gift, you know, and I just thought it was just another muscle you work on, like if you're doing wind sprints or something. But yeah, it's. I mean, the other thing too is like later on, I really got attracted to inking because I could tell good inkers from bad inkers by the results of the comics. If it looked really shabby, it was somebody who used ink and just really didn't know what they were doing, and they were banging it out for the deadlines. And I love cold graphic blackness because it's like you're taking an image from reality and you're editing it down to a line art with values and weight, and you're somehow pulling it off. It's like, comics are ideally, they're stylized improvements on what you actually see in reality. Like you'll see the idealized characters and environments. So, and that always really sang to me. I don't know if that's the right, that sounds kind of pretentious saying that.
No, I think you're fine. I think that's a great description there, Drew. Appreciate that. Okay, so Drew, I'm going to ask you to hold on 1 second here because we're going to go to commercial break. Everyone, so hang on, and we'll be back in just a minute.
You got to pay those bills.
There you go. Okay, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Kit Moran, visual artist and jazz singer, and I listen to Partnership for the Arts talk show.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to Partnership for the Arts, where we talk art. We are sitting here with Drew Geraci, there we go. Comic book artist and also novelist, and we're going to get to that. But we want to make sure we thank Kit Moran for that spot. Again, Kit Moran is a jazz musician. She's worked for Merv Griffin, Burt Bacharach, many others. She is also a playwright and a oil painter here locally in the Punta Gorda area. So Kit, thank you for that spot. And if you want to learn more about Kit, you can certainly check out that episode on our website. So Drew, we were talking during break, and we were kind of discussing the process of how a comic book gets created, how it starts. So can you kind of run through that process with us?
For many, like the first 7 decades of comics, maybe or so, it's been assembly line style for purposes of getting the books out on time. For the longest time, quality wasn't 100% important. It was just get it out. And you had studios like Jack Kirby and Joe Simon had their studios, or they had like 50 people, men and women. Jack Kirby would like lay out a page very loosely. Somebody might pencil it and then hand it literally over to the inker in the next table, and he would ink it up. Or the letterer, that was hand lettering, which I miss because it was very much like calligraphy. And I don't mean fancy fonts. I just mean like the letter S may not look the same in the same paragraph. It's just those little human touch nuances that are now gone thanks to computer lettering, which is all very samey. For many years it was that way, but solely to get product out, because when Superman hit big and then Batman hit big, there were all these comic publishing houses that just grabbed everybody and anybody. And so they had it was like an assembly line, get the books out on time, because they were selling in the millions in the 40s, and it dropped off a bit. Rarely ever got back to millions, except for a very brief time in the early 90s when the speculator craze hit. It almost killed the industry because everyone realized if you buy one of a million copies and saved it, it's not going to be worth anything because a million other people have it. Anyway, but that went on. And then the last 10 years or so, they've changed the way they do it now. Like I scan stuff. I used to live and die by FedEx. I'd have to finish my pages. And sometimes my wife would drive me to the FedEx office. I'm still taping up the box and filling out the form. And, it was a real race against time. And, but I was always good with the deadline. And I just did sacrificed whatever I could. But, lately the onus of production is more on the freelancers, which it's kind of awkward because it's sort of like having a second job. Kind of have to get with the times. Like I'll have pages scanned and sent to me. I'll print them out in blue lines, which is 25% blue, no black, and then I can ink over them. And any of the pencils in blue will not reproduce when it's. So that's becoming more common. And the production is also. They basically got rid of the production in-house, and a lot of letterers and such know how to format the pages so that they'll print properly. But I'll finish my inks. Instead of mailing it off to a colorist or the editor, I will scan it and send it to the FTP site. And the good thing about that is that instead of waiting a whole day for FedEx to show up, you could take a job and get the pages within an hour, less than an hour, without having to wait till 9 in the morning or hang out on the stoop. The thing I love about inking is, in a sense, I had final say in how the art would come out. My purpose is to make the pencils shine, be as good as they can in whatever style. It doesn't have to all be clean and neat. It could be, scruffy and, if I was doing a Western or something. But a lot of times if I do something like that, then colors may add like this huge fade effect to insinuate smoke and such like that. And a lot of times that destroys the design elements of the panels that you look at.
So when you're doing the inking, Drew, do you do the whole panel, or do you specialize on a certain character in the story, or you do it all, the whole 9 yards?
Oh, I do the whole thing. The lettering used to be on the board, but now they just do it in production. And I do sort of miss seeing the lettering on the board because to me that's a comic page. But I do everything. First, I ink the border panels with a bold tip or pitograph pen. And, if I'm warming up in the morning, I don't do it like a face or something incredibly nuanced. I'll start with a building. I get triangle, my beveled triangle and all that. And I do all the windows, and it's real easy stuff. I literally like wake up to that while I'm, sipping coffee, and, which is below my table. I don't put my coffee near my table because that's inviting disaster.
Right.
So, I ink everything, but then as I get warmed up a couple hours in, I'll start doing figures and faces. But I had an assistant a couple years in the 90s, and he was awesome. He did a lot of my backgrounds, and I paid him fairly. I gave him pretty much what my rate would be if I did X amount of panels. But I do everything. Pretty much 90% of the comics I've done. And what I like is I can ink like long flowing hair a different way than I would bricks, and that would be a lot looser, more freehand. And then I could draw metallic stuff with like a plane flying in the area. I would use rapidograph pens and ship curves and to do all that stuff. So there's some stuff I love being. Like trees are so fun to ink because they're organic and you can't screw them up. It's a tree. There's no design
set pace.
Yeah, there's no like design sheets for a tree, So that's what I really enjoy because if I get something like that to play with, the textures and such, oh my gosh, I'm in heaven.
Well, who's your favorite artist to ink?
Gosh, that's a tough question. I think this guy named Scott Eaton. He's not really famous, but he's done a ton of stuff for Marvel and DC over the years, and I got to ink him on a story arc in Thor and then a 4-part story arc in Captain America, and it was great. And the thing is, a lot of times editors will have their own groups of inkers and pencilers and they'll mix and match, so it's like Scott got called onto another project that already had an inker in place, so I had to find another gig, and I did. It's just that I would have loved to stay with him, but it just wasn't in the cards. It's nothing. It's not scandalous or anything. It's just the way business goes.
It's the way the industry works. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, Drew, I had a question pop up there. You had mentioned something about you had an assistant and you were paying. So how does the rates go? And do they pay you by the page or by the panel that you do?
Oh, good question. I get paid per page.
Per page.
So there'll be times where, I will have a Tuesday sitting on my duff, just like not having anything. And for that day, I'm unemployed. So I used to call the letterers. I worked with this guy named Chuck Dixon, who's very prolific, and he has very stripped down style where he doesn't get too purple prose like in his writing. And I would call the letterer and say, can I have a page or two for tomorrow? Because I got nothing to do on a Tuesday. And having nothing on a Tuesday means you'll probably have to end up working that Saturday or Sunday or both. So it's a page a day, and it's a flat rate, and there are royalties involved later on, and especially if it gets collected in trade paperbacks. So I have like at least 30. I have an Amazon page that has at least 30 books on it of trade paperbacks, and it's only because I can't remember all the other ones I've done. So, but it's flattering.
Yeah. Okay. And timelines, do they vary on you very much? Timeline work, the deadlines work for you?
Well, usually a page a day, and there's 22 pages. Well, there were, now they're down to 20 in a 30-day period. But the problem is you don't always get the art in a timely manner. Maybe the writer is late. Maybe the penciler had to go to take care of some family stuff out of town. So you have to accommodate for that. And a lot of times, sometimes work will bottleneck up for me, but it'll really bottleneck up for the colorist down the road, And that's sort of how it goes. It's like the more pages I do, like summer of '96, I was a shut-in for the whole summer because I was doing 2 pages a day for a 200-page project. And it was a Superman and Wonder Woman Elseworlds special. Elseworlds is like a different version of the DC universe. But I made my bones with them, and then ever since then I got, they knew I was somebody to rely on. But that was wild. That was my really. I mean, I worked on small titles, and this is like my first big break, and it got me the attention. So that's what you have to do sometimes.
Sounds like it was nonstop with lots of coffee.
Well, you got two pots a day.
2 pots, a pot per page, huh? Is that the way it works?
I didn't even think of that ever. That's funny.
Yeah. Okay, so Drew, I want to back up just a little bit. You were talking about how you first got involved in it and your start. You graduated from the school, and did you just go out and start looking in the industry? I mean, how did you actually get started where you were doing the pages?
I mean, there was a big year gap. I mean, I graduated in '86 from the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, and I didn't break into comics till 1994. But a lot of it was I had a job doing paste up, which is very early pre-production stuff that most people wouldn't understand. I'm just saying, not to be rude, it's just that it's very archaic way of doing things now. So I started off doing that, and I kept getting promoted, and I kind of got caught up in like, wow, they like me enough because I'm working hard, and this company promoted from within, which was really good for me to learn that, hey, I can achieve this stuff. So then when I was about 27, I said, why don't I apply the disciplines I've learned through these hard jobs that I've excelled at and apply it towards breaking into comic books? And that's, if I did not have that real world experience, I probably it'd still be crying that I never made it into comic books.
I mean, did you start submitting artwork to people, or how did you actually get to where you were doing your first assignment?
Oh, well, I mean, I sent samples to Marvel DC. This is back when they could take unsolicited stuff. They don't accept unsolicited samples because of legal issues, which is understandable. But no, I work on my portfolio. I met Dave Johnson at a convention, a Dragon Con, and I got his address. He mailed me some sample pages, and there's this frosted acetate you can ink on. So after that, like by the end of the week, I had 2 pages, and he liked them and left me a message, and I was like a schoolgirl with a crush listening on the other end. I'm like, woo, I can't believe it, he noticed me. So then I started pretty much right away, but it wasn't a lot of work because Dave still did a ton of the heavy work. I was the background guy. And but it was taking off the training wheels. It was like, wow. I mean, I was like, wow, this is the real deal. And So, I mean, is that just right place, right
There you
time?
go.
It's like
Meant to be.
I met, yeah, and then the guy from Justice League America, his inker, had left to pursue some other, career, and there was an opening, and I sent samples on Thursday night, FedEx for Friday morning, and Brian Augustin told me the pages are coming on Monday. So it's like bada boom, bada bing.
So do you attend conventions now?
Oh yeah. I do about 5 or 6 a year, and I like to. There's a lot of great ones in Tennessee. I tend to like to stick to neighboring states because after a while, you don't want to just break even, just to go to yet another place that, I sort of have to make some money, and so I have to consider. I could be home making money, yet I'm traveling. So, but I love conventions. I mean, comics fans. I mean, I'm still a comics fan, and I just love talking to people and hearing what they're interested in, what they, it's like this fascinating secret community, with a secret handshake, even though it's out in the open, because I never forgot who I was when I was on the other side of the table.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So everyone hold on. We're going to take another break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk with Drew, and we're going to get into the novels. So Drew, hold on there 1 second.
Okay,
We'll be right back. Okay. Okay, that was a pretty good sound effect.
That's from Warner Brothers. They use that at the end of a lot of Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Keep that recorded and use that from time to time.
Sure. Feel free.
We'll be right back.
All of me, why not take all of me? My name is Michelle Kazanowski. I'm a musician and a teacher, and I listen to Partnership for the Arts talk show. Take my lips, I want to lose them. Oh, and won't you take these arms? Who are they going to hold if you refuse them?
Wow. Every time I hear that track, it just blows my mind. What an incredible voice. And an incredible woman. Michelle, she's a local teacher here at the school. But the life she has led and the people that she has met, along with her father, George Mancini, is just incredible. The amount of talent that the big stars that they have sung with. And you can find out about all of that with George and Michelle. 2 different episodes. But you can certainly find all that and many, many more on our website at PFTA. And again, that is Partnership for the Arts, PFTA talkshow.org. And we are talking art with Drew Geraci. He is a comic book graphic novel inker. And Judy, you promised to take it from here because I'm going to enjoy some of my coffee.
Drew's been talking a lot about some of the work he's done in comic books, but Drew, we'd like to hear about what you're doing right now.
Oh, that. Okay. Keep myself pretty busy, actually. I'm inking it's an indie crowdfunding project, but the campaign hasn't started yet. Told not to say anything until it comes out. So it's like I'm announcing something's coming out eventually. But anyway, it's a superhero related story, and most of the comics I've worked on are superhero related. I've done some other genres, but not many. Comics are mostly superhero or supernatural and stuff like that. But I'm just about done. I swear I'm going to get it done before the new year. My 3rd volume of my novel series called The Demands. It's a Amazon exclusive. It's about a 22-year-old girl named Lainey Kilburn who moves from Maryland to Pittsburgh on her own and eventually forms indie rock band, and they play many bars and other venues owned by the local Russian mob East Coast. Things get really dicey and ugly, and the two intersect. It just gets real entangled, and there's also a romantic entanglement with Lainey and a guy that she doesn't know is mobbed up, and they're like a lot of young punks that are kind of they think they're posers, but they're enough to cause trouble, and my whole catchphrase is rock and roll is dead, and they're next. Because the whole impetus is, it came back a while back. I'm being snotty here when I say I can't stand all those talent shows. As my friend Chuck mentions chipmunks singing other people's songs, and with really repetitious beat. You have like 6 co-writers, and yet they say the same phrase over and over again. So it culture anymore. And in fact, you would say that almost rock is dead. And I grew up with a lot of bands that played a lot of they play instruments and were virtuosos. They exist, and then you'll see a lot of older acts that go out on the road that do well because people are kind of craving that sort of stuff with the more edgy stuff. Because I've read so many little insights, and I have such a fascination with that stuff that I thought. And my cousin Sean has been in a band for decades, and he's my advisor on technical stuff. Because I don't know. I know I have a guitar actually. I don't know how to play, but I know which way to point it. So that's the start. But I just have such a passion for it. It's like I want these people to be like the rock and roll saviors, and bring it back big. And the thing is, the silly thing about it is it does sound silly, and it's so audacious but this 22-year-old girl Lainey is just young enough with conceit of youth to believe that she can turn the music culture around. And it's like that when you're at that age, you definitely have the fire in your belly to think all new ideas, which you don't know the limitations. I mean, you may learn them harshly later. And so I kind of tie in with music. I tie the music in with art. I tie the art in with entertainment, because I, like many other people and many other companies and whatever, we're all competing for the same entertainment dollar. And now there's so many forms of entertainment out there, Netflix and everything, which I love. And it's just that someone has to really like your stuff to want to part with their precious little money that they spend on entertainment to buy what you want. And that with my novels, I'm the same way. I mean, I really promote it, and just like artwork, I do a lot of commissions, I do a lot of shows, and you have to have a business mind in a sense, only because you have to push through so much competition today. I mean, with you were talking about some fellow in Russia you were interviewing, and just
with Igor, yeah,
mm-hmm. and it's that would not have been possible before. So we're all competing internationally. And so I kind of take my books to be like a microcosm of the drive to try to stand out in a crowd where everybody claims to be an entertainment, even if they do it like once a year and they suck.
Now, you said this is your 3rd installment on the novel, correct?
Yeah, it's a series, because a series mm-hmm. sell better from what I've told. I mean, because you had like the Twilight series, you had the Hunger Games series, and those are the only like the big ones. I mean, there's a lot of smaller ones too, and I love working that format. I originally was going to do it as a comic book back in 2008, and then when the crash hit, I was like, I ain't feeling ambitious. I'm going back to comic. I'm staying with comics. And as far as DC and Marvel inking, because I was going to write and draw mm-hmm. it, but I found I'm too slow at doing wearing all those hats. That's a screwed up metaphor, but you know what I'm saying. It's so fun not having a limitation arbitrarily made to be like 22 pages and pace it out and continue. And comics are expensive. They're $3.99. And I'm pretty good at describing things through an artist's mind. I've been fortunate to do that. And I've really honed that for the longest time. I want to entertain myself, but I'm also trying to make it to where anybody could read it and understand it. Maybe get different interpretations, but I just love it so much. I'm having so much fun with it.
Well, that's good. Now, you're saying when is this going to be done? You're going to try and finish it by the end of the year?
Well, The Demands Book 1 is out on Amazon mm-hmm. on paperback and Kindle, and Demands 2, B-Sides, is also available on Amazon, paperback and Kindle. And his 3rd one is called The Demands Stage Dive. And there's going to be a lot of waxing and waning of the popularity and the ability of Laney's band to get together and work and try and not fall into a lot of tropes of artistic people, whether it be somebody not having enough fire in his belly so he has to get booted out, or just, or someone overindulges and shows up late. And it's, so I put a lot of emotion behind everything. And then there's also a lot of there's some satire in there too, and I just love wordsmithing. You know, I first started writing when I was waiting 3 friggin' weeks for pencils to come in from this artist back in 2014, and so I thought I got to do something with my time off because I didn't commit to anything else because I can't overcommit or else I might screw up a deadline, which is, you know, verboten. And so I started writing. I'm like, hey, this came out pretty easy. It's like, I mean, I just wrote like the first 2 chapters, and I sent them to a friend of mine who's a very successful writer, and he says, well, this is a strong start. He goes, let me rearrange the first page or 2 of it, though, and he did, and it helped. So I'm fortunate in that aspect, and I am so observational about stuff. Sometimes it's annoying. I'll watch TV and I can't get out of my head. I'll be like, I'll see the design or pattern of the top of a ceiling, and you see all the little panels, the drop tiles, and I see them as perspective points, you know, from where I am all the way to the back where someone's, and then also I'll see something, somebody will say something that will invoke a feeling in me, and I think, what if that person said it to me? How would I respond? And then I would come up with something I'd have to jot down for my novel. Or I think, what if this person said it to this one fictional character who's not like me at all? So it's like the possibilities are endless, but at times it can be a little maddening, you know?
I understand, but I don't think we've had a chance to talk this time, and it's been a while since we talked because I'm working on my own graphic novel as well.
Oh, congrats.
Yeah, so first installment. But I understand all of that, and I think anyone out there that's ever been involved in art, or especially comics, can appreciate that and quite understand that. I think that's kind of universal with any artist, actually. Let me put it that way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it has... If you're going to be real about it, it has to consume you at points, you know, that you don't even mean to. It's like if you're really deep in it, it's just going to insinuate itself into your regular life. And while it's, it's not ideal sometimes it's like, I can't shut my mind off because this is a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
And the big thing, too, is I've learned about writing is you have to be willing to delete or get rid of the thing you love the most. I originally was going to do it as a superhero comic, and my friend Chuck Dixon, who created Bane for Batman, he told me, I love the story, lose the superhero. So I sulked for about a good week, and then I gave him a new treatment. He said it was a lot better. He says, I wanted to learn more about the band. And I'm like, okay, so that's the way I'll go. But I know so many people that are like dogmatic. It's like they haven't proven themselves, and they say, well, it's my style, you know. And even it works with art or writing. I mean, somebody could be a really crappy artist but convince themselves because their parents, their friends are all telling them, oh, you're great, you know, you're the only one who draws in the neighborhood. But it's like you have to be real. I have to reach out to someone I don't know and grab their attention, you know, grab them by the, you know, what do you...
I hope you're thinking lapel.
You know what I'm talking about. So, lapels. That's it. You grab them by the lapels, and it's like you have to show them something that they will not want to skip. You know, they will definitely want to buy your wares, and that's a hard thing. And freelancing's a hard lifestyle. I'll be frank. You know, it's high highs and low lows.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I understand, and I'm so glad you went with lapels. I was kind of concerned where you were going there.
I know.
Okay, well, Drew, we're going to be wrapping up here shortly, but I've got a couple of questions for you. And Judy, you got anything else you want to cover with him there?
Well, I've just been fascinated by everything you've said, and it sounds like you're really loving what you do, and when you do, then it's not a job, is it? Although you do have deadlines.
Yeah.
So, Drew, out of the people you worked with, because obviously you've mentioned some big names there as well in the comic book industry. So, you know, I have to ask, ever get a chance to meet Stanley?
Oh, yeah, I saw him in 1995 at the San Diego Con, back when it was still mostly comics, and he did a panel with artists from the Silver Age, you know, 1961 through 1970. You know, it's so funny. As a kid, I always imagined running into him somehow, like his car would break down in front of our parents' house in the winter, and he'd have to spend the night, and he would tell me stories until it was too late. I had to get my parents to send me to bed. So he was just as charming and just warm as I had ever hoped he was. I mean, I know for years people were like, "Oh, Stan's all hype," but he makes you feel like you know him. And I did get a picture taken with him. And I'm not even putting blinders on as a fanboy. I mean, I've been disappointed by people that I've loved, but Stan was just like a really, really cool uncle that you can't, when you see him at family get-togethers, you just love seeing him. You know, an incredible ambassador to comics.
Yes, well, I don't think the industry would be what it is if he hadn't been there. Anybody else that you've happened to rub elbows with that you were excited about?
I was with Mike Carlin, who was my editor during the Superman and Wonder Woman summer of '96, where I was I managed to take a week off, go to San Diego, and I ran into Frank Miller. It was just really wild. Wow. And it was my first convention, 1995. Give me a second. Oh no, it was '96. First thing I see, I'm getting my pros badge. Who's standing over in the pros area putting on his badge? Mickey Spillane.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh my, And I didn't say anything to him because I just didn't know what to say. I was so stuck. But then when I got in there later, I saw a lot of people who classic comic or Silver Age comic artists I admired, like Gil Kane and and others like that. And when I'm around those people, I do a lot of listening. I find that it's a real obnoxious move to act like, oh, well, I just got hired to ink this one book and now we're on the same level, Yeah, it's like, no, I'd rather sit and I had a friend who was at a show where Will Eisner was sitting at a dinner after a show. I mean, Will Eisner, the Spirit, basically revolutionized. He was sitting at a table with my friend who's a really good artist. I'm not going to mention his name, and he's gotten awards also. But there was this young self-published guy who really didn't have a name, and he kept interrupting Will Eisner.
What?
Yeah. Acting like they were equals and all this stuff. And my friend got really ticked off because he's like, that's all that time I could have learned from him. This other guy was yapping his mouth off, So it was like a moment in time stolen.
Interrupting Will Eisner.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah. And people like Sergio Aragones, the Mad Magazine cartoonist forever, and he's always at San Diego because he lives in the area, and he's just such a wonderful guy, just so gregarious and sweet,
That was one of my favorites, Mad Magazine.
Yeah.
Of course,
I'm dating myself. What can I say?
Oh, I think that's universal. I can't imagine someone not liking Mad Magazine.
Yeah, they just stopped publishing it recently.
Yeah,
but its time had come. I mean, it was a thing of its time.
Well, it had a long run anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and hope you do too, there, Drew.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Drew, we're going to be wrapping up here. We're running out of time. Anything else you'd like to add?
I don't know. I think I pretty much covered everything. But I really appreciate you taking the time out to jibber jabber about my nonsense.
Well, we don't think it's nonsense. It's great to get a chance to catch up with you again there, Drew, and finally get the scoop on everything you're doing and, success with your novels going forward there. How about ways some people can find you? I know you had mentioned a couple of places people can find you.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, and my name is Drew, and it's GERACI, and there's a drewgeraci.com. And then there's a drewgeraciauthor.com, which covers my novels and has non-spoilerish teaser chapters from the books. And I'm also doing a lot of commissions lately. For some reason, it's been this like groundswell of commissions I've gotten, and like some recreations and some new stuff, whatever, a variety of things. There's empty sketch covers that are printed by Marvel and DC that you can that I can work on. Like I've done stuff like that, a little of everything. So it's all good.
All right, good deal. Well then, I think we're going to look at wrapping up. Judy, you good?
I'm good, Dave.
Okay. All right. Well, Drew, appreciate you coming on the show. Great talking to you. And if you'll just hold on there for one more second, Drew, we'll get something with you after the show. Okay, so we're going to look at wrapping up, everyone. That was another episode of Partnership for the Arts where we talk art. And we finally got to do the comic books. I've been waiting for this for a long time. And it was a great show, Drew. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you. Much appreciated.
Okay. Hold on one second, if you don't mind.
Okay,
Me and Judy are going to wrap up. Okay, so pretty cool stuff, huh?
That's very cool stuff. I enjoyed hearing about that and learning about it.
Yeah, good insight. Well, that's, this was your intro into the comic book conventions because I got a couple tickets booked for you. We're going to go to them.
Oh, great. I can't wait.
We got them close. Tampa's, Florida's got a great lot of them. Okay, so everyone, thanks for listening to Partnership for the Arts. Judy, you have a great day.
Thank you, Dave. You too.
I will, and we'll get together next show.
Can't wait.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. All right. Well, Drew,